Unfortunate news on the cabin front, everybody. This week I discovered that the back beams are almost completely rotten.
Wow. Oh my God.
I was in the process of attempting to re-level the entire foundation of my cabin using a jack that I borrowed from neighbor Al. I was going to jack it up, install some new posts underneath, and it was going to be all good. But then I discovered this at the back of the cabin, and it threw off all my plans, not only for just this week's video, but my whole plans for the entire winter of what I was going to be doing up here. So today's video is going to be a little bit different, not my usual way of making a video, because I did put in a lot of work this week, and I want to share some of that with you, but it just led to a complete dead end, and I don't know. So the way that I'm going to do this is just tell this story in chronological order. That's the most simple way to tell a story. So let's jump back to 4 years ago. And the first thing that I did at the cabin was rebuild the front deck. And the reason I did that is because it was very obvious when you looked at that deck. Whoever built it did not use pressure treated material, and it was exposed to the elements, and the posts and the beams, they all rotted really, really bad, and it just needs to be replaced. It was super obvious. So I did that.
That's it.
Rebuilt that entire front deck, and in the process of doing that, I replaced some posts in the front. And I knew at the time that the beam in the front needed to be replaced as well, but it wasn't super bad. I was like, that's going to be something that's way on down the road, and I'll just deal with it later on. For now, this will do. It'll do for several years. So I think it was before I rebuilt that front deck or right after. I can't remember which came first, but I actually did crawl underneath the cabin and I checked the grade using my laser level of all those posts, and I drew up this diagram, and I was like gung-ho about it. And then I realized, man, this is just a huge thing. I don't want to deal with it right now, so I'll put it on the back burner. So over the course of the next 3 years, I spent my time doing a bunch of stuff in and around the cabin. You guys have seen that, made videos on my channel all about that. And it was last year that I redid the skirting on that side of the cabin over there. That was the first time revisiting the issue when it comes to the condition of the posts and beams underneath the cabin. And when I was redoing that skirting, I noticed that one of the beams on the very back, right at the corner, it had some rot going on, but I thought that it was just right there, right at the corner. And I was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's still kind of solid, so I'm not even going to think about it right now. I'm just going to finish this skirting. And I replaced some of the 4x4 posts. A couple of them were still good. So I redid the skirting. It was all good to go. I moved on from there. Fast forward further into the future, I did more projects, built a woodshed out there. And then we come to a few weeks ago, I just demolished the back deck. And when I was doing that project, I said,
This deck has been in really bad shape ever since I purchased the cabin about 4 years ago. And I've ignored it for the most part because it's behind the cabin. Nobody ever really sees it. But the last few videos, I've been working behind the cabin and I've been looking at it and just thinking, man, this is really bad. I need to take care of this thing. So it's finally time to start demoing it. I'm just gonna start pulling up boards and seeing what I can salvage. Hopefully I can use some of the lumber for future use. Not sure exactly what I'm gonna find once I start tearing this apart, but here we go.
And through that process, I revealed the condition of that entire back side of the cabin. And when I looked at the posts, the 4x4 posts that go down to the ground, those aren't pressure treated, but you know, you hit them with your hand or test the rigidity of them, they still look pretty good. I'm like, these are actually in good shape. Not something that's like super, like I gotta address this right now or the cabin's gonna fall over. It wasn't like that. So for multiple reasons, I decided, okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is replace these windows. So I think the video that I made 2 weeks ago was me replacing the windows on the back of the cabin, in the bathroom, and then that back corner bedroom. And then the next thing I was gonna do was replace the sliding glass door, but then I started to look at the posts and just kind of think more and more about this. And I was like, if I start re-leveling the cabin, there's a chance, I wasn't super worried about this because the cabin's not that far out of level. It's not like the glass of the windows is going to shatter, but I don't know, maybe it could possibly. So I was like, I probably should have done that while the old windows were still in, because if I break the old windows or break that sliding glass door, who cares? But now I installed those new windows. So I was like, okay, I should level this cabin now before I work on the sliding glass door, before I do anything else. I've been putting this off for such a long time, doing all this other stuff inside, which I'm super glad that I've done because I've made the cabin very comfortable. But I was like, okay, you got to do this now. You have to re-level the cabin. So I borrowed a jack from neighbor Al, re-found that diagram that I made 4 years ago, and I went back under the cabin and I checked grade underneath all the beams. Right where the posts make contact with the beams, I rechecked the grade, updated that diagram. And the good news is the cabin over the course of 4 years has not shifted at all, hardly. I used a different benchmark, so each one of those numbers on that piece of paper are a little bit different. It's a lot of explaining to do, but basically I discovered that the cabin hasn't moved over the course of 4 years. So it was built in the 1970s. So since that time, parts of the cabin, it's sunk over here, it's sunk more over here. It's not completely flat. It's not a perfectly flat plane like I want it to be, but it's taken 34, almost 50 years for the cabin to get where it is. But over 4 years, it hasn't shifted that much. So that's good news. There's a crap load of posts underneath this cabin, 49, I think, total. And I'm just like, oh my, this is just a beast of a project, but you got to just do one at a time. So I started in that back corner, got my jack set up, and that was the first time that I was down on my hands and knees really close to that back area looking at those beams, and I start jacking up the cabin and it lifts up in the air a little bit, and then I just go, you know what? Oh my gosh. I did not look that closely at this situation, and let's just play some of that footage.
All right, you guys, I think I just discovered something really, really bad. This is not good. See this right here? Oh man, just straight up rot. Oh boy, same thing right here. It's soft, not as soft as over there, but this is pretty bad. The beam is solid right here, but I don't like the fact that it's soft right here. Yeah, that's not good. Not good. So this one right here needs to be replaced, that beam. These other ones look and feel solid, but I can't really tell until I cut this off and reveal what's underneath there. Over on this end, this isn't looking good. I already knew about this, but I wasn't really concerned because I felt this part and this felt solid to me, but now I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm just thinking it would be really dumb to go through all this work, jack up the cabin, put new posts under there, and jack up rotten beams. That would be just dumb. So I think I'm gonna have to replace all these, but let's go ahead and snap a line, trim that siding off, and reveal what it looks like behind there. Holy shit. Wow. Oh my God.
So I cut the siding at a specific spot. So there's the beam, and then there's 2x6 tongue and groove that sits on top of those beams, and that's the floor of the cabin. So that's the whole structure. It's 4x4 post, beam sits on the 4x4 post, 2x6 tongue and groove, and then the floor is on top of that, and the walls are built off that tongue and groove. So I know that the bottom plate of the wall is resting on those 2x6s, so I just measured up appropriately. I think it was 7 3/4, because 5.5 plus 1.5 inches plus 3/4 would get me to the center of the bottom plate. So I snapped a line right there, and that's where I cut the siding off. So there you can see what was revealed. It's in pretty bad shape. So what I did from there was add some bracing just to add some extra security because I decided I am not going to deal with this winter. I'm going to wait until the dry season next year, spring, summertime. I'm not going to do anything with this until that time, till it's dry. And during the process of when I thought I was going to be re-leveling the cabin, I added more bracing on the side where the skirting is. So the T111 siding that I have for skirting, that adds a lot of shear strength, but then I also added 2x6s going diagonally along that whole wall, along this whole wall, and then underneath the cabin going this way, I added more 2x6 bracing. And then on the very back, I added these ones here. So around the entire perimeter underneath the cabin, it's braced. So it's like steady this way and that. For the rest of the winter, I feel very safe inside the cabin, like this thing is sitting sturdy. And after adding the bracing, I grabbed a roll of Tyvek that I've had for a long time. And luckily for me, it's exactly 3 feet, which is just about right for what I need. And I just use that to cover that area and staple it. I know it's not like watertight right up against the building. Like if the rain comes down and hits the siding, it's going to work its way behind there. But for the most part, I'm just worried about water coming off the roof, splashing off the ground, and then just completely soaking all that stuff and just furthering the decaying process of all that stuff. So I just rolled out that Tyvek. This is just for the winter. While it rains and snows, it's going to, generally protect from weathering further until next year when it's dry. And I think one of the main reasons why this whole rotting situation happened at the back of the cabin is because the water was running off the roof and splashing off of that old deck. It was just soaking the siding, all of that, and it was just constantly wet. And it caused all that rot to happen. So after I install new beams and posts and finish the skirting, I talked about that when I took apart the deck, but my ideal skirting situation would be I want to redo the skirting, not only on this part of the cabin, but in other areas, even that whole sidewall where the plumbing is, and then as it wraps around to the back. I had a vision when I first redid all that. It was really nice and pretty. I had it all caulked and I was going to paint it. Obviously I never got to painting it, but now I have a completely different vision of what the skirting is going to look like in the future. I think I'm still going to utilize that T111 siding that I put all along there, and I'll be able to utilize this stuff too, but I think it's just going to be the backing for some type of a wainscot. And that is when you have one type of siding like exists here right now, and then you put a barrier or like a trim piece, and then you have a different type of siding going down to the ground. So that might either be some like masonry looking stuff or just metal roofing as a wainscot. I kind of like that idea because everything runs off the roof, splashes off the ground, and gets wet anyways. So I think it would be really easy to maintain just metal panels that match the roof. So these are all ideas. But then the ultimate goal would be to build a roof over the back area and the sides. So have a roof all the way around, a lean-to roof. I think that's what you call it, lean-to. Just leans on the existing building, and it provides protection all the way around the perimeter of the cabin. So when rain falls and it falls off the roof, it's going to fall away from the walls, away from anything that could be damaged in this way. And this is something that the lovely Julia and I have already talked about. Like, our future house is going to have a wraparound porch because Julia likes that, and I do too. I think wraparound porches are really awesome, but they're also awesome because they protect your house so well. I don't want my future house to get wet at all. Like, I don't want the walls to get wet. Every wall needs to be protected by a long overhang of a roof, and like the foundation should not ever see water. That's my goal for the future house, and most likely want a slab on grade foundation. I don't want to have a crawl space. That's the story of me discovering the rot behind the cabin. Very unfortunate, but with all that being said, I'm going to move on to different projects here around the cabin. It is definitely wintertime. As you could see from some of the footage at the beginning of the video, I did get a little bit of snow, not anything crazy. It lasted for a day and then it melted, and then it's just been pouring down rain really bad. So winter is definitely here. The outdoor projects need to be put to the side, and I got lots of stuff that I can work on in the interior of the cabin. But also, the holidays are coming up too, so I'm looking forward to spending more time with the lovely Julia and just kind of relaxing a little bit, but finding a balance. There's so much to do on the inside of this cabin. It's never ending. So I appreciate you guys checking out this video. It was shorter. Tried to keep it short, sweet, to the point. That's it. That's a wrap for this week. Appreciate you guys checking it out. See you on the next one. Thanks.